Everybody. Welcome to the Wild Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Heskett. Ed, we got another Coffee Talk Friday. So, as always, we're going to set a timer and try to stick with the time. Did I do better last week? I think I did. Anyways, this is, I believe, episode 131. So, we're going to get into it. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to talk about today, but real quick before we get into today's topic, which is going to be um, not listening to every quote unquote expert or um not feeling defeatist by what everyone says. Maybe that's the right term. Maybe that'll be the title, not being defeatist. So before we get into that, make sure if you enjoy the show, give it a like, subscribe, give it a review depending on what platform. If you're on YouTube, obviously subscribe. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give it a like, rate 5 stars, subscribe, etc. And as always, also sharing it. Share it to your social media. That helps push the show out, which helps it grow. And then I can do more and possibly even eventually one day maybe do 3 or more episodes per week. So with that being said, let's get into it. So there was a video going around where it's Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, which for the most part, I really like her content. So this is going to be one piece of content. I believe she was on a podcast with Ed Milet, who also I like a lot of their content, which this is important. Just because someone is very smart doesn't mean that they're always going to be correct about everything or that everything they say is going to apply to you. So, for example, I would not recommend you take everything I say as gospel. You should learn from me. I think pretty much most of the information I'm going to say is correct. However, not all of it is necessarily going to apply to you and your situation all of the time, in which case you should also listen to other experts, also just different points of views. I'm going to say something in one way and it might not connect, and someone else will say it a different way. Maybe they have a different analogy that is more related to your life. So, for example, if you're a nurse and I don't have any nursing experience, but my wife does, so I might talk about something and you're like, that doesn't really connect with me. But if another coach who has who was a nurse, then gives an analogy like nursing, and you're also a nurse, like, oh, that clicks. It might be the same information, but it clicks. So, the reason I said that is I don't want to say like Dr. Gabrielle Lyon's a bad expert. 99% of the stuff she puts out, I really like. I think it's very helpful, but she has a clip saying walking is an exercise. And the problem with some of these clips is not exercise to who, not exercise for what. Now, how we defined when you're studying exercise science, like where you're going into exercise physiology, you're taking exercise science courses, you're getting a certification in strength conditioning or personal training. We define exercise and physical activity as two different things. So physical activity, think of it getting like your steps in per day. Physical activity is unplanned. There's not really a specific goal to it. So going outside and playing frisbee or throwing the ball for your dog or playing with your kids or just randomly go like, hey, I have 15 minutes. Let me go weed the garden real quick. That's like physical activity. Versus exercise has a specific purpose. I'm going for a walk to do X, Y, and Z. I am going to strength train to try to improve week to week. I'm going to run and try to get X result. That is the difference. So the problem with her clip was she's just saying walking isn't exercise. And I haven't watched the podcast, but this is the problem with podcast clips is it cuts off. So I'm not sure if she then goes and defines it's not exercise, but it's physical activity. The problem is it got a ton of views, and a lot of people are like, well, if that's not exercise, that's all I can do. For example, if someone's very overweight and they're very limited, maybe they don't have a ton of money to spend for a gym membership, maybe they live in an apartment where it's going to be very difficult to do any kind of strength training, walking is accessible to basically everyone. Like you just throw on shoes and go for a walk. Don't need any special equipment or gear or anything like that. You don't even need running shoes. You can just use the shoes you already have. So it creates a very defeatist attitude in many people who thought they were doing something good, especially early on. If you're just making a change to your health and fitness and you are trying to improve your health, and all of a sudden you see, we see this a little bit more with diets and exercise, but all of a sudden you're like, I'm walking every day. I'm starting to see results, but that's slow. And I'm trying to eat better. And all of a sudden that gets slammed. Like, that's not exercising. You're like, I thought I was exercising every day. Now, for someone like, say, myself, who's been working out for a long, long time, walking isn't quote unquote exercise. It is physical activity. It goes under NEAT. Yes, we're getting a little nerdy here, but for someone who's untrained, walking is a great place. We had a few clients come to our gym when I was working in person where we wish we could have just had them walk, but people are paying like personal training rates, and they're like, no, give me results as fast as possible. But you're like, we would literally have them like push like an unweighted sled because the mobility was so poor and they were so untrained that just like walking around was enough exercise. This isn't going to be the exercise for the next 6 months, but maybe over the next 3 to 4 weeks, that's all they do to build up a basic cardio. They will build strength because they're going to build some strength in their legs. And then we start to incorporate other things. And so we wish we could have had those people just like, I wish that we could have just had them walk, but we can't, like, they won't just do that. So we like did other, like we would push sleds and then we would just do like upper body until they built up mobility enough to be able to like actually do an assisted squat using like the TRX straps down to a box. That would be like month 2. And yes, it was very boring programming, but it worked. People who like stuck with it, it worked very, very well for those people. But early on, it was very hit or miss. Some people just got, because the sled was heavy, like you had the friction, and then the one sled was like 100 some pounds, and there wasn't much friction with that one, but it was still like, if you are untrained, you're still trying to push something with weight. And that, you know, not to sound silly, but that is actually max capacity for that person at that time. Now in 2 weeks, that's going to be nothing for them, but at the time, so we also have to get people over the hurdle. And maybe this is you just starting out, like, we don't want to feel defeated early on, because nothing's worse than like trying to make a change, getting slammed against the wall and just feeling like you can't go anywhere, like nothing you're doing is right. Not like, it's a terrible feeling. And I think many of us have experienced that feeling of like, I'm trying to do everything right, nothing's working, or everything I do is wrong. We see this a lot with our diet. Like, you're trying to make a change, you're trying to eat healthier, and then some influencer online is like, don't eat eggs, don't eat kale, don't eat oatmeal, don't eat red meat, don't eat veggies, don't eat this. I would never eat dairy. You can literally find it for including water now. Like, unless you're filtering your water through a $5,000 machine, you're getting your air purified through another $5,000 machine, and then you're eating all this grass-fed, organic, grown yourself food. Like, it's like, I would never eat that. And that's the problem, is nobody's talking the nuance of, it's okay to start out here. We want to make a change, and the change you have made is good. Is it perfect? No, but we don't need to be perfect. And consistency will always beat out perfection, because I've seen the people who try to be perfect from day one, and it's such a leap in their lifestyle, and all their habits are built on this lifestyle, and they're trying to go over here, which I'm now off camera. I'm trying not to whack the mic. But it's such a big leap that they anything that pops up, you're going to go back to what the default setting. So when we're trying to make these big leaps, usually it's a time in your life where you can do that. And then all of a sudden life likes to throw a curveball, stress comes up. When stress comes up, you get overwhelmed. We go back to our default. Default setting was these other habits. Instead, okay, we know we need to break these habits. So what's better? Try to like white knuckle it, which is not the answer, by the way, or we can make a small change to those habits we have. Okay, we're still going to keep pizza night every Friday, but we're going to order chicken Caesar salad with the dressing on the side. Maybe you get like the Bolthouse Farms. Like I bring this up because this is my wife's favorite salad, and this is generally what we'll do with pizza nights too. Okay, we're going to order a salad. There's our veggie, and then we're going to have chicken with it, and maybe it's the Bolthouse Farms like half the calories. Um, and there's a few other Caesar dressings out there with much lower calories. We'll go that route, or we'll do like the chicken itself is just meal prepped. Maybe we'll get a rotisserie chicken to go with it, or we'll just cook the chicken in like the Caesar dressing, which is pretty good, by the way. Or we just order something for protein. But we're going to have pizza night still. We're going to have our veggies. We're going to have our protein. First thing I eat is the chicken and the salad, and or maybe it's one slice of pizza while it's piping hot, or two slices of pizza. That's kind of what you calculated you can fit in. Then I go and eat a big hunking piece of chicken and the salad. That's a small change. We haven't changed what you're eating that day, really. You're still keeping Friday night as pizza night, but now instead of four slices of pizza, we've reduced a ton of calories. Yes, there's calories in the chicken. Yes, there's calories in the Caesar dressing, but we can still use the right amount to cut that back, and we're getting more protein and more fiber with this meal. So it's the same thing. We haven't really changed all that much. We actually added, which helped reduce the pizza. And this is how we want to go about making a lifestyle change. We want to cut certain things just back a little bit by adding more things in instead of trying to cut things out. Because most people are like cutting out all gluten, cutting out all sugar, cutting out all dairy, cutting out all these things that I really enjoy. Like doing that shit would not happen in this house. Um, Cutting out all pasta. My wife's Italian. I've gone over this podcast on this podcast a couple times. Just going anytime like her family invites us over to their place, it's generally some sort of pasta or risotto type dish. So unless it's summer and they do like burgers and hot dogs, but even that, there's some sort of pasta or grain. Yes, you could just eat the burger and the hot dog, but yeah, let's then there would be comments made, and you would just have to deal with that. Um, and then cheese, like okay, on top of that, like there's also going to be no cheese. Like that is just not realistic for us. But that's the direction people go. So they have all these meals. We do pasta night. We do these foods. All that's going. And it's like now what? Now you start craving these foods, and it was these foods are bad. Some experts said these foods are bad. I read this one thing. I listened to this one podcast, and we're cutting it out, which is okay to experiment with. But I don't think it's good for someone just starting. You're starting your health journey, and you're trying to make a change. You are just starting to lose weight. Don't do this. This is great if you've lost most of the weight and you want to try to make tweaks and see how your body responds. But at that point, you've built a good relationship with food. So at that point, we can add in or reduce certain foods and see, like, hey, how does my body respond to this? I feel better. I feel worse. Makes no difference, but I like that food, so I'm going to keep it in. But if you're just starting out, don't try to follow that. Just take the things you're already doing and try to add more protein and more fiber. And by more fiber, we're talking swapping out, say, pasta for whole grain pasta. We're going to swap white bread for whole grain bread. We're going to add more veggies and fruits into our diet. We're going to do all these things. Is this going to get you spectacular weight loss results? Probably not. Just you might get that initial push, but you will need to take things to the next level. But that is the initial push. You haven't made much changes. Now, when you go to that next level, okay, now we're not trying to add fiber in, add protein in, add all these things in, make these changes, and try to track our macros. You've already kind of started. You already increased fiber in your diet, and maybe you kind of know how much fiber. and you already increase protein. And maybe you kind of know how much protein is in. So now you just tweak things so that you're hitting your calorie goal and your macro goals instead of trying to leap to that. Because we always try to do like the fastest way possible, and that's not necessarily the best. So the way to look at that is so something I've done with AWC over the past couple weeks since joining is um, all the back end systems. Erin will completely admit that she's not the most tech savvy person. She's amazing at doing copywriting and the emails and everything else. But her weak area, and one of the reasons she brought me on, is the back end support. So there's this whole big email sequence that needed to be built out. And we were, she just had it like living. So, like, she paid all this money. She had it like the emails written out for it, but not the sequencing and everything else for the back end. So I come in, took a little while, but built that out. And then you can kind of coast. This is the same thing when we're building habits. You kind of have to go through a period that's kind of boring. It might take a long time to build out. But once it's built out, like now that I built out this email sequence, when people join the email list, they just go through the sequence providing value to them, but it's hands off on our end until like say someone emails us back and then Aaron replies to their email. But it's very hands off. But it took a while to build that. Same thing with your habits. It takes a while to build that, and then next thing we're trying to talk about doing this with some other things with the business. That was just one thing. So there's been a few automations and everything that I have built out. It takes a little while. It might take me a day to build it out or 2 days. The email sequence was more like a week, but now that it's built out, it just lives. It's just there, and we can go in and we can tweak things. We can modify things. So right now we're split testing 2 different routes, seeing which one responds better, which route has more unsubs, which route has more people replying back, which route has better open rates, to see which one's better. And then the one that works better, we're going to delete the other route. So it's currently like a 50-50 split. So we're testing things. Same thing applies with your health and fitness. We need to test things out. We need to try things and see how it works. So you can't test things. You can't do all those things if you just try to eliminate everything, or if you're defeatist early on. You can take things with a grain of salt. So, for example, carnivore community will say like plants have all these toxins in them, blah blah blah. They're not necessarily wrong, but we also have to come in with like the dose makes the poison, and also people's individual genetics play a factor. So some people need a low FODMAP diet, which is a type of fiber. So if you eat a bunch of foods that are technically healthy, well, we need to change that. So I remember having one client where she needed to go on a low FODMAP diet. And the problem with this was she just focused on all the things she couldn't have, which I'll admit is a big list of foods that are very common. Like if you're Italian, it's pretty rough because onions and garlic are on there. But there's plenty of foods that aren't on that list. And people will so often just like focus on the one thing. This is the things I can't eat. These are the things that I can't have. I can't do this kind of workout. So why bother? Like, no, you have access to all this other stuff. Let's, the glass half empty, glass half full type thing. We want to focus on the other things. And if we go through a process of maybe healing the gut, maybe we can add more FODMAP, foods high in FODMAPs back in. But she was like, oh, these are all the foods I generally eat, even though they are causing my problems, and I will feel better removing them. And maybe in the future at the back end, I refuse to make any changes. And therefore she got frustrated because she wasn't seeing results. It's like, well, these foods are literally causing inflammation in your gut. You feel like garbage most of the time. End of the night, you're complaining, you're uncomfortable. So the change is this. It was just like a refusal. And we have a podcast coming out next week on the Stop Talking About Fat Loss podcast. kind of talking about some of these things, like people just throwing up their hands up in the air, or just like the no mentality. Like, I'm desperate for change. Okay, do this. No, can't do that. Okay, try this. No, can't do that. No, can't do that. Okay, well, what the fuck can you do? And then people will just stare at you. And I've had that conversation with many people before of like, won't exercise, time, don't like it, whatever. Okay. Won't track their nutrition. Okay. Won't change their nutrition. Shit. Won't get more sleep. Won't cut out alcohol. It's like, you said you're desperate for a change. Well, what the fuck are you willing to make a change to do? And people will also say, like, I want to cut out all poison. Okay. So remove these foods. This influencer said, cut out all these. Okay. So do this. Well, my spouse won't let me. We have to keep these. I thought you were cutting out all poison. Well, dot, dot, dot. Well, I can't give up my alcohol. Well, that is literally a poison. And that is one of the few acceptable foods in society that is actually carcinogenic. Um, so, what the fuck are you willing to do to get the changes that you want? If you're not willing to make any changes, then you're not going to see results. But if we're willing to make some small changes, if you're like, okay, I know something has to change. Like, if you're in a position right now and you're listening and you know that what you've done in the past hasn't worked long term, like you haven't kept the weight off, what small changes are you willing to get the results you fucking want? Can we make slight changes to dinner? Yes, no, maybe. Can we maybe communicate with our spouse who tends to self sabotage us? Yes, no, maybe. Can we do X, Y, and Z? So we got, again, the podcast coming out next week, on the Stop Talking About Fat Loss is all about this, but there's a client who's been blaming their spouse for stopping their results. But that person also refuses to communicate with that spouse, who apparently has like zero experience with cooking, of how to cook or find a recipe or do any planning. Like, my life is too overwhelming, but then won't stop bitching about her husband who won't make any changes, who doesn't know how to do something. It's like, the solution's in front of your face, and you're unwilling to either send a recipe or send a YouTube of, like, he doesn't know. He says he doesn't know how to use the air fryer. Now, is it weaponizing competence? I don't know. I don't know the husband. But it's like, okay, send him a YouTube video. You're telling me he is saying he's willing to help, and you're not willing to do it. You're not willing to provide him the little bit of information, which will take 5-10 minutes out of one day, and provide you with months of him creating a healthy meal. So he's probably just, I know how I would react. I'm just going to be like, I don't know. She said she had a shit day at work. She's stressed out. Pizza's her comfort food. I'm going to fucking order pizza, which has been what's happening. And so that person's complaining that I can't see results because of my husband, when the solution's in front of your face. Same thing applies when we're listening to, I can't afford to eat all grass-fed, all pasture-raised beef and chicken and eggs. Therefore, I haven't changed my diet. I'm still eating very high-calorie mac and cheese, ramen noodles. I order out all the time. Well, what the fuck? Biggest thing here is I can't afford expensive groceries. Okay, well, what can we afford? What better thing can we do? We can add veggies. Well, so and so said they would never buy organic. Okay, well, you're not eating any veggies right now. So it doesn't matter that there's some glyphosate in the veggies you're eating, because the fucking shit you're eating right now is full of glyphosate, if we're saying there's glyphosate on everything. So what changes are you willing to do? I'm not willing. I can't afford to eat healthy because eating healthy is expensive, but you order DoorDash 4 times a week. I had someone not sign up for coaching because she was worried that the meal plan was going to cost her more than what she was spending on groceries each week. But she ordered DoorDash literally every single day, and sometimes multiple times a day, because sometimes it was also dinner. So I literally sat her down and went through all of her lunches. She was spending about $25, $30 a day, 5 days a week for lunch. So let's just say five times 25, 125 right there. And then another like, let's say $50. Let's just say it's 175 per week just in DoorDash for lunches and for one dinner. And I think it was more like two dinners. So it's probably in the 200s. Like, there's your budget. There's your budget for healthy food. You already are budgeting for groceries. Like, you're already buying more than enough food for groceries to feed everyone. So we just found you 175, $225. You could do it. The problem was she didn't want to make that change. So it's like, well, there's where you can afford coaching. There's where you can afford your grocery bill. We found it right there, and still didn't want to make that change. Like, no, no, it's just going to be too expensive. Like, it's not. It's not. You have the solution in front of your face. You're just not willing to put in some effort to meal prep and do other things. And I say that because we went over her schedule and she had the time to meal prep. It's not like, oh, well, this person could be crazy busy. I'm not talking about your situation necessarily. This person's situation had the time to do it because we went over everything. Like, yeah, we can make this work. Um, so again, not being defeatist, not listening to everything online. Pick your experts. Pick a handful of experts. Listen to them. See what they say. Do they show real evidence? For example, I will always say Lane Norton. A lot of people don't like him and think he's paid off by X. The paid off thing always gets me. I'm like, well, when are these people getting their checks? Because companies don't do that. I saw that it was a dietitian say going over how like rotisserie chicken's fine, and people were like, clearly paid by Costco. Like, what? Costco loses money on the rotisserie chickens. Like, that's not paid off by Costco. What the fuck? Um, People's brains have like two brain cells anymore. Um, Pick a handful of people who show randomized human control trials, who talk in a way that's more nuanced, and that's going to help you. We can absolutely get some information from some of the more extreme accounts, but if you try to listen to all of them, you will get overwhelmed. You won't know what to do. Instead, if you just apply a few things and make small changes over time, you will see results. You will get to where you want to go in time. It's not going to be in 30 days unless you don't have like a crazy goal. But if your goal is weight loss in 6 months to a year, if you apply small changes over time, those lead to big changes. You will get there because we don't have a weight loss problem. We all know how to lose weight. If you're listening and you're like, I don't know how to lose weight, bullshit, you know how to lose weight. You've probably done multiple diets where you've lost weight, but it always comes back on, right? It's not a weight loss problem. It's a weight regain problem. It's a defeatist problem. My wife this morning was like, oh, because she has PCOS and hypothyroidism, so it's harder for her. She's like, oh, I know how to lose weight, but it's terrible. And it's like, going back to her eating disorder days of like starving herself and using laxatives, like that's not the solution because the weight would come back on. It's never been the solution. And it's why you have gut issues to this day. It's not that. That is how you would lose weight and regain weight. That's not the solution. The solution is finding something where you lose the weight and keep it off. I've had a couple people like, oh, well, I did keto and I lose 10 pounds in the first month, but no more after that. I would just get so fed up and tired. Like, well, you lost mostly water weight. They're like, well, it's the only thing ever that I lost that quickly. Yeah, it was water weight. And it's like, just like the brain doesn't compute. Like, all that matters is that scale number going down. Like, no, we need to find the solution because you weren't able to keep it up. So we need to find a solution where we can get that weight off, have you lose weight, keep it off for good, and then you will see the results. You will get to where you want to go with whatever your goals are. With that being said, as always, guys, Appreciate it if you like, shared, commented, etc. But also, there we are doing it ending on Sunday a giveaway. So if you're like, fuck, just coach me and help me through all this process, Chris, down below in the show notes, you can apply for coaching for free. We're giving away 6 months. You will work with Sarah one on one for 3 months, and then you'll come to me for 3 months in the Prime program. So you will get one on one coaching, and then you'll go through the group coaching model. And then you can always upgrade if you're like, I want to stick with Sarah. You can stick with Sarah or myself with a. You can always upgrade to that if you want to stick with it for longer than 3 months. But we are giving that away for free. So if you want to actually commit, stick your toes in the water, down below it's 5 questions, and the first three are name, phone number, and email. So we can actually contact you if you win. Um, so there's the three, and then there's two other questions you have to fill out. That's it. That's it. So I would recommend going and applying for that. If you're like, just I need to know what to do, I need someone to guide me, fill that out. Fill out the application. And I, I don't know why, because I don't know. We're not planning on doing another one. I will say that. Aaron didn't really want to do this one, but decided we're going to do it. And I don't know, we might do it once a year. So it might not be till next year at this time. So apply now, do it now. If you're like, oh, someone else deserves it more, fuck that. Fuck that. That's the mentality we're talking about. Just go fucking apply for it.